In this video, I'm going to give an example through a story, a hypothetical fictional story about narcissistic or histrionic abuse, not the disorders, but the behaviors, and nobody's diagnosed, and then some. It doesn't have to be either one, considered either one. And I'm basically writing short stories, or maybe even a long story, regular story, using this example of what some would call a dude ranch. Some would call it a guest ranch. And this is the second part, the second scene, basically. But it's going to go along with the first one, so if you want to watch the first one, at the end of this video there is going to be a pop-up that's in a rectangular shape, and it'll say the first one. You can click on that and watch it. And anyway, in that first one, I'll have to go over some of it. This ranch, it's a big, huge Texas ranch that went back generations that are long gone. And I introduced more than one character, but I gave two of them names. One is Mark, and he married into the family. He and his wife were married for 10 years. And you know, this is a huge family. They have lots of kids. It's kind of like a tradition to have lots of kids. He was married to his wife for 10 years, and they had 5 children. And the last two were twins. And his wife died during the birth of these twins, due to just complications. And he was left with 5 children. From her. Now, like I said, he married in. He's not any blood relation to any of these generations and generations of, that have been passed on, to where some of them are just really distant cousins kind of thing. He's no relation to them, by blood, but through this marriage, this former marriage. As I said in that video, his children, the family that owns it, the elders, they live there. And when anybody who works there is usually somebody who's related, relation. And when twice a year they take a vacation. Now what they have is, like I said, a guest. They have cabins and cottages and beds and breakfasts, things like this on this really huge one. And people like it because they like to have that Texas ranch feel. They pay for it. But two weeks out of the year at least, they close it to just family. Your family that doesn't live there, that doesn't work there. But when they come in, they usually work. They work there during their vacation, whichever one. And somebody plans it and all that good stuff. That way, the other people who actually live there and do it year-round, they get vacations and they can go wherever they want to. But the food is not supplied for them when they're there. They don't have to pay any money for the cottages. But they do have to cook for everybody who is there and who's working, and they fill in everything. They do the work because they were basically raised there. I mean, not raised there, but they were raised in this tradition. So it's all been worked out over all these generations of how it works and all that. And I mentioned that Mark, in the last video, that Mark, he came there with his girlfriend. His wife had passed, and eventually he had a girlfriend, and he came there with her twice. First time briefly, the next time they were, like I said, just there briefly. But the next time things were being noticed. She basically felt like this was her. She was not in any shape related to them. It wasn't her children. It wasn't her family. So that she should be treated as a guest. And they let her know that she should not be. She would not be. And they wound up leaving. Okay. Now, and this is where this video begins, is once they left. Mark and her name, I named her Sissy. They left with the children. They had an option. They could have left the children there, and it's such a big place. They have, of course, daycare and all this, and the family would take care and watch over the children. And but Sissy, she threw a temper tantrum, and they left. And so after they left, they left early, and usually people in the family, when they do that week, they do a certain length of time, and it's their responsibility to be there, like a week, the whole week, or a few days. And and there's somebody who schedules all this out, and they get it all worked out. Well, Mark and them, they left, and Mark was called back in by the family. Now, they don't live very far away, luckily, but he was called back in the family, and they said that he needs to speak to one of the elders. Okay, now he understands, after his wife passed, that his children stand to inherit, some of the property eventually, if they follow certain rules, and he knew that, and that he actually gets for them through, because of his, he was married in the family, think of a dividend, because they own this ranch, this whole big, huge family. They own this ranch, and they basically own most of the town there. Okay, so he knows this, so he's being called in, and they get that little dividend checks, and that helps him. He lost his wife, and all that helps him. Now, Mark always liked the family. He knew how it went, because he would go out there with his wife and whatever children he had at the time, and the children were basically taught, how to do things on this ranch, and taught about ranch life and all that. So, he really knew that he needed to go in because of the dividend, and that helps him out with all of them, and so he went, and he was to speak to one elder, and then at some point a lawyer would come in, and he knew this, and he was prepared for this, but it was kind of shocking to him, okay, to have to go through all this. He was wondering what was going on, and so he went there, and it was one of the elders that owns it at this point, one of them that owned it, and he set him down to have a long discussion about the family. This elder went back to to the history, and said that it was a bunch of families that moved to Texas many years ago, so long ago, that they're no longer alive, and they basically started a town, and they had all of them had their own acres of land, and they started this town up, and of course, when their children became adults, they married other family members. Other families' members, not family members. Of course, they married their neighbors' children and vice versa. A lot of them, families. And at some point, some of them decided to, over the generations, they decided to combine their ranches. And that's how they have this really huge ranch. Now, Mark knew a little bit of these things, that he was told by the elder, but not all of it. And maybe his wife, Tanya, his late wife, Tanya, she just didn't know enough of it herself, but many of them did know some of the history. Maybe she just didn't tell them all of it. But so he went through listened about the history and how it works. Then the elder went on to say how the money is split up, and basically anybody who stays within the family, they have figured this all out over these generations. It stays and then comes in. Sometimes they help out, or they contribute in some way to the running of and continuation of the ranch. They get something like a dividends, and stand to inherit. Anybody who doesn't want it, they want to opt out completely, they move on, they don't contribute at all, they're welcome to do that too. They're not controlling anybody on, whether they do or not. It's up to them. Now, as far as the children, it's a different story. Okay, and this is a situation where the actual family member is deceased, and the children, he has 5 children. Family, his 5 children are, stand to inherit. So it becomes an issue, because the elder tells him, the elder, is an elder, and just says what he thinks he should say. And he said that he heard about the incident with his girlfriend coming there and throwing temper tantrums, expecting to be treated as a guest and have her meals delivered to her, not helping out. And anybody whose family, all members, help out when they come there, if they're not regular employees. Okay, and many of them are, you know, that's where they work. They work on the ranch and make their own money and stuff. And they can do that or not. So, you know, Mark's, you know, he's torn a little bit, but he says, yeah, that's, you know, we had to leave. And yes, this did happen because, you know, it was reported that this happened. And the elders, you know, they don't like that. The family doesn't like that kind of thing. You know, it's not their place for them to come and have arguments and for somebody to think they're above it all. You know, when it's family time, those, you know, no. And it's explained to him that she is no longer welcome back there. Okay. Yeah, the elder tells him, not trying to treat him like a child, but just stating, she is no longer welcome back. Now, that lets him know, that puts him in a position, because his children, if they want to, you know, eventually inherit, they need to be coming back, and he needs to be coming back with them, and to work as everybody else, do something on the ranch during that time, if it's in the kitchen or what. But the children aren't working. The children don't, I should state that, they are not having to work, but they're learning what it's like to do things on a ranch. They don't have to. Yeah. No child labor law problem here. But you get what I'm saying. You know, hearing all this, and he's understanding all of it, but it's putting him in a position, because if Sissy's not coming back with him, well, as he lets known, after his wife died, you know, that's a member of this family now, he was very overwhelmed with 5 children and you know, twins, just newly born twins. And there was this Sissy. She offered to help. She even offered him to move into her home. And she had been a friend of his late wife, Tanya's. She was a friend, kind of a distant, somewhat friend, like, you know, they grew up together kind of thing. Well, some of us would say she swooped in, you know, and saw him, and she had a home, and she let them move in. Let the elder know that might be a problem, because, you know, she might not like that, and the elder doesn't really acknowledge that. He's not that concerned, I guess, but he lets Mark know that Mark can't, if that is a situation for Mark, if Mark wants to, he can move into, you know, like I said, it's kind of like they own the town in a way. And he can move into one of the houses, you know, they just have the main house. I kept trying to figure out what would I call it, and I said big house. I said, that's wrong, that's bad. You know? But the main house. And, you know, the main house, they have like one wing, it's huge. They have one wing that is for guests, and he could, you know, have plenty of rooms. He and his children could live in, you know, at least, you know, a big suite. Or they could, you know, they have other houses there, other cabins and so forth. And he could live there, but he would need to work there. But Sissy was not allowed. And they are firm. They were firm on this. You know, he said, it's not my decision, it's just not my view, but she is no longer allowed on this property. We do not allow that kind of behavior on our property for someone to treat other family members the way she did. And she treated them poorly. There was Mark, okay, and they, you know, he was told what he would earn in you know, finding out what kind of job he does, and he's an accountant, and they said they could find room for him there to work there and get paid, and he wouldn't have to pay rent, but he could get paid, you know, unless he wanted to rent something special. You know, he wanted something special for he and his kids, and you know, they would be part of it, and you know, they had this figured out somehow, like how much the family actually puts in work toward the home, you know, the ranch, the whole operation, you know, including stores and stuff, that they get a certain percentage each year, the dividends and whatever else, they get a certain percentage. So all this is explained by the lawyer I said that would come in at some point, and he would need to sign a contract, and that he too, then they went on and said he too would stand to inherit for it if he did this. And so there he is having to make a decision between, and it's a hard decision, between, okay, here's his children, but if he did this, he'd have to give her, his girlfriend up. And he was thinking about asking her to marry him. But of course, in his mind, who comes first is his children. His children are first. Then what about his life? And then someone he's just dating at this point. And she did do, he was still quite upset and angry and surprised by her behavior when she was visiting there, the second time. How bad she behaved toward the rest of the family, and how inconsiderate she was of his kids. This is, their family, and that they stand to inherit, and she just dismissed that. She says it's not her kids, it's not her problem, this kind of thing. He was kind of shocked, so he has to think about all this. Now, what would you do? I'm going to wrap this one up, this episode. But what would you do if you had to make a choice between the person you lived with who suddenly started showing a really bad side, like a narcissistic histrionic kind of behaviors, and was causing your children, that's not their children, but your children, problems that could affect the rest of their lives, and you, in some sense, then you had a choice to make. What choice would you make? What would it depend on? I mean, you're not married to this person. You do share, live in their house, you live together. But you're giving this opportunity. What kind of decision do you think you would make? Or do you think a person should make? Somebody else? Some hypothetical, fictional person? What do you think Mark should do? Anyway, wrapping up. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment below. Talk to you. Oh, and by the way, this is kind of like a rough draft for me. So don't expect it to be perfect. I might screw it all up and misname somebody in another video, or get things out of a place. It's, like I said, rough draft. So, and it's not for anybody just to take and say, make them their own. Too many people do that. Wrapping up. Talk to y'all later.